you know a kid who can use an apron? Me too. Let's get our pattern, our fabric, and sew together this ruffled kids apron. I'm going to make a youth size today. You choose which size you want to make. Get your pattern, get your fabric, and let's get started. We are making a ruffled kids apron today. The first thing you need to do is go download your pattern. You can find it on Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. Once you've downloaded your pattern, choose which size you want to make. There's 3 options: a toddler size, a child size, or a youth size. Youth is what I'm working on today. So pick your size, print off those pattern pieces, and we're going to assemble them and then cut out our fabric and sew it together. The pattern has to get chopped apart just so that it can fit on your home printer. So all we have to do now is take the pieces back together. So on the youth size, there are a lot of pattern pieces. On the toddler size, because it's little, there's not so many. So once you've got them all printed out, we're going to trim them with some paper, scissors, and tape them together. Don't let this look more overwhelming than it is. You'll see that there are directions with lines and shapes that show you exactly. So I have my pocket, my ruffle, and my body. Now, to make the ruffled apron, we're going to do one more thing. The ruffled apron is a little bit shorter in the body because we're adding the ruffle to the bottom, which adds some length. So this takes a little bit of time to get it trimmed out and taped together, and I want to save this so that I can use it again. So instead of cutting where it says cut here for ruffle, what if I want to do the straight body next time? So I'm actually going to fold it under. Now, if it's easier for you to go ahead and cut it, that's fine. You choose. But we do want to shorten this up so it won't be too long when we add the ruffle. This works for me. Now I have the correct length. I can see my notch down here that I want to cut for my ruffle. You may have seen notches that are shaped like a V or a triangle before. My background is actually in production pattern making, so sometimes I do things a little bit differently than you might see on your home patterns or when you're sewing at home. This is one of the things that is sometimes different. Production pattern making means that I made the patterns that the seamstresses in the factory would use. So I always try to be the most efficient, the most streamlined, use the fewest amount of steps and the smallest amount of fabric possible. So the notch may be a little bit different from what you've seen before, and some of my cutting and sewing techniques may be a little bit different from what you've done before, but try them out and see if it saves you a little bit of time or fabric. All right, now that we've got our pattern ready, let's cut it out. I've got my fabric and my fabric scissors. First thing I'm going to do is fold it. Our pattern piece shows us that we're going to place this on the fold. So we need a fold in our fabric so that we'll have a symmetrical apron. So that's pretty typical. You're used to doing that, I'm sure. But I'm going to show you something a little bit different. So we have a tendency to want to fold our fabric exactly in half to put the selvages together and fold it exactly in half. Now that's easy and that's totally fine if that's what you want to do. But watch when I lay my pattern piece on here. I'm going to have all this over here just to cut these ruffles and this pocket. So I'm going to end up with some waste over here, what I would prefer to do is fold it just as much as I need. So I'm going to open this back up. See if I can do it without knocking my pattern off the table. All right, this way I can figure out I only need one pocket, so I'm going to lay it over here where there's only one layer of fabric. Now on the ruffle, I'm going to need 3. So what I'm going to do is cut 2 right here. You have a grain line. For this ruffle, it's not necessary. Now, if you have a directional fabric, meaning that there are words or a picture or something that must go up and down so it doesn't look upside down, you want to use the grain line and you want your ruffle to sit this way like it's smiling, so that on your finished apron, that pattern, that print is facing the right way. I have sort of a tie-dye floral looking print here. Doesn't matter, it's not directional. So with the ruffle, not with your other pieces, but with the ruffle, you can turn it sideways or tilt it so that it fits the best on the fabric. So I'm going to make room right here. I like to do it in the armhole so that I've got room to cut 2 pieces there. So let's slide out a little bit more. So right about here is going to work for my pattern. I've got my body piece on the fold, and I'm going to get 2 ruffles here. Then I can use this one layer on the other side to get my 3rd ruffle and to get 1 pocket, and then I'll have a bigger piece of remnant instead of 2 smaller pieces of remnant. A little side note, that's great to use for a gift bag if you're making this for a gift or just to put in your gift bag stash. Got 2 different videos about how to make a fabric reusable gift bag, so you can take those leftover pieces, check out the other videos, go make yourself a fabric bag also. All right, for now, if you want to cut out this way as well and save yourself some fabric, now all we need to do is grab our tape measure, which I need to get mine real quick. We're just going to measure a couple of spots here, make sure they're the same. And then you'll know that you've got it folded nice and squarely in half so that you're still following the lines of the fabric and you don't have your fabric skewed or twisted. Give me just a second. Great. All right, my last little tip before we cut out. If you are used to pinning down your pattern piece, that's totally fine. That does take a little bit of extra time. So in a sample room, definitely in the factory, we would never take the time to pin anything down. You would use weights. Now in the factory, sometimes they have this super cool table that's like a reverse air hockey table where there's air suction that holds the fabric in place. But in a sample room, for instance, we would use weights to hold our pattern in place, and that's absolutely something you can easily do at home. You can buy a pattern weight, which is a long metal thing that has a handle on top. Something a little bit easier to find that works perfectly well are these old, heavy irons. You just need to make sure that the bottom is smooth so that it doesn't tear up your pattern piece or snag your fabric. But get your pattern piece laid down just how you want it. Put your iron on there. If you have a big pattern piece and you want to use 2, you can use 2 little pattern piece. 1 works perfectly fine. If it's a very small pattern piece, I actually just use my hands sometimes. If you don't have a weight, that's fine. Get your tape dispenser, get a book, get something else that's heavy to hold it in place, and then you can trim around it and save yourself a little bit of time. So let's get all these pattern pieces cut out in our fabric so we can get sewing. Don't forget your notch. I have my ruffled apron all cut out, 1 pocket, 3 ruffles, and 1 body piece that was cut on the fold. Grab your ribbon. If you want any trim to put along the bottom, that's totally optional. You don't need that. You can decide after you make the apron, but get your pattern pieces and your ribbon and let's sew this together. The first thing we're going to do is prepare our pocket. If you have a serger, you want to serge all the edges. If not, you're going to get your pinking shears and trim those edges so that it won't ravel. Next, we're going to turn down the top of the pocket. So if your fabric is directional, you want to make sure it's facing up. We're going to fold down the top about 1 inch. You can measure it or you can just eyeball it. And then we're going to stitch just this top down about 1/2 inch seam allowance, back stitch at each end. My sewing machine is a little different than a home sewing machine. I actually don't have a back stitch button or reverse button, so I have to use the hand wheel. Another little thing you might notice about my machine that's different from yours is that I don't have to use this lever back here to raise the presser foot because I have a knee lifter that does the same option. So we're also going to trim the corners here. Get that on both sides. Now we're going to stitch across the hem of that pocket. Okay, let's prepare a ruffle. So on our ruffle, we have 3 pieces we want to stitch together to make 1 ruffle. If you have a serger, you can go ahead and stitch the pieces first. If you're going to use the pinking shears, it might be easiest to go ahead and pink the bottom round edge before you stitch them together. with the right sides together. Right sides together, we're going to stitch about a 1/2 inch seam allowance back stitch at each end. With the pinking shears again, we want to trim this seam. Now if you have a serger, you can of course serge these seams, and you can serge this bottom edge now. So we have one ruffle made up of 3 pattern pieces. We have our pocket. Let's take these over to the ironing board and press them. We have our neatly pressed pocket now. We're ready to attach to the body. You do have markings on your pattern piece for this. I like to just eyeball it. You're going to center the apron on the body, and you're going to place it in the belly area. We're going to edge stitch our our pocket on the 3 sides, but we want to create a triangle at each top corner of the pocket. That adds reinforcement so that the pocket will be strong and sturdy with lots of use. So I'll show you the direction I like to go to make it one continuous stitch line. I'm going to sew down, then turn, sew up, across, then I'm going to go all the way around the pocket, across here, and then down to finish the triangle on the opposite side. So there's our pocket with our reinforced corners. Next, we're going to hem the armholes. This is a little rolled hem. So what you're going to do is flip it upside down so you can turn that hem in. You're going to fold it about 1/4 inch and then fold it again. That's going to be your hem. You're going to do that for the whole armhole on each side. Alright, we're going to get our ribbon for our neck. Your pattern piece has your length marked for whichever size apron you are doing. So you're going to need 2 pieces the same length, and I'm going to show you how I like to cut those. So measure out, and then instead of snipping it straight across, I'm going to press it and make a little fold. And then I'm going to cut it on the diagonal. So now I have a nice diagonal cut on the end of my ribbon, which will help it not fray so much. And I can use this cut piece to make sure that I've got 2 that are the same length. The straight pieces I'm going to sew into the neckline, and then I've got a nice snipped finished end for the outside end of my neck ribbon. We're going to take that raw edge, that flat edge, and stitch it to the raw edge, flat edge of our neckline. You don't have to back stitch here, it's going to get stitched again. We just want to get it in place. Flip your apron over. We're going to hem this neckline with a little rolled hem, exactly like we did on the armholes, but now we have the ribbon in here. So it's going to get caught nice and secure in there. So same thing, you're going to fold over about 1/4 of an inch, and then you're going to fold it over again. So just push that ribbon out of your way, and you'll see how the ribbon's going to get stitched in there nice and securely. So just to make the neckline look a little bit neater, I like to take this ribbon, press it up, and then stitch it here so that it's stitched flat, ready to wrap around the neck on both edges. All right, now we're ready for our ruffle. So we have notches marked on either side. We've got our ruffle seams pressed flat, and we're going to align those with our notches. Stick a pin in those little spots. Line up the edges and stitch this all the way across. All right, now we don't want that raw edge under here either. It will ravel. So again, if you have a serger, you're going to serge this seam. If not, you're going to get your pinking shears and trim it with them. We're going to get our ribbon for our waist now and cut it exactly like we cut our neck ribbon. The size you need is marked on your pattern for whichever size kids apron you are making. We're going to stitch the flat edge against the raw edge of our apron body right at the bottom of the armhole. Doesn't have to be back stitched, you just want to tack it in place so it gets caught in the hem to be nice and secure. Let's do that on both sides. We're going to hem the side the same way we did the neck and the armhole. We're going to fold it in a quarter, fold it a quarter again, so you'll see the ribbon gets caught in the hem very nice and secure, and you're going to do that all the way down. Back stitch at both ends. Now to make this look nice and pretty, I'm going to just fold my ribbon and edge stitch it on the front so it'll be nice and flat and ready to use. Repeat that on the other side. This time I'm going to start down at the ruffle just so that I can keep everything on this side of the machine. So your apron is finished except for some trim if you want. If you would like to add a trim along the bottom of the ruffle, like a rickrack or a lace, now is the time to do that. Otherwise, if you would like to add a bow to the neckline, you can do that with your leftover ribbon. So to do that, we're going to just make a bow by itself. Alright, when you're happy with how your bow looks, go ahead and trim the ribbons. I recommend a slant, or if you want to fold them in half and give them that sort of V shape, that works too. But however you want to trim the edges of your ribbon so that they're not going to fray so much, go ahead and trim that before you stitch it on. And then what we're going to do is place the bow wherever you want it on the neckline. I like to put it on the edge right at the base of the ribbon, but you choose where you want it. We're going to just push this knot to the side and stitch right through all those layers. This is very thick. I'm going to just use the hand wheel for it. So your bow cannot be untied now, which is nice for a kid's apron. It'll stay put. It's fine as it is. I like to add a second stitch on the other side of the knot sometimes, just so I know that when they wash it, it's not gonna flop and it'll sort of stay put exactly where I want it. So I'm gonna add another stitch. This is just a little extra secure tacking. And there you go. It's on there. It's not going to come loose. It can't come untied. So your apron is finished. I hope that you enjoyed making this Ruffle Kids apron as much as I enjoyed it. Again, this was a youth size. You can choose a toddler size or a child size, or see the other video for how to make a straight body apron without the ruffle on it. Please join me again for more DIY projects, or for when you're too busy to DIY, check out Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi, for lots of ready to ship holiday and home decor items as well as gift items.
And also like and subscribe. Yeah, so like and subscribe.
Thanks, boys.